Okay, friends, hang with me while I stumble through some stuff that's going to super help you do your typography exercise of making a font a lot easier. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into FontBird. I'm going to show you how to use auto trace. So let me go ahead and type in font, or bird font, bird font. Boom, there it is. I'm going to open up that bad boy. So SLI Open Font License, I'm going to go ahead and create a new font. So I will go to the hamburger dropdown. I will go to File, New, and there's that new one. I'm going to hit Command S right now just to save it. I'm going to save it in this folder that I have set up. Spring 2019 tutorial, FontBird. Should be BirdFont, but who cares? Teaching, test, Pooty. I don't know why I put Pooty, but I like it. Save. All right, before I do anything, what we're going to talk about is actually bringing in a background image and using that background image to automatically create an actual vector in the lines without actually having to trace it and do it yourself, having the program do it. So in this folder here, I have Megan's, one of your fellow students, a page from hers. Now, this is what I want to use, but if you'll notice, it's pencil drawn. And so if I want this to actually auto trace really well, it should be pretty much black and white, super dark. So I'm going to actually bring this into Photoshop. You don't need to use Photoshop. There's a lot of programs you can use, but I want to bring up the contrast to make these absolutely dark, all these numbers. Another way to do this is to actually use a Sharpie and draw it in so it is fully black on this. Or you could bring this into Photoshop and actually draw it in like that. But maybe taking a Sharpie and doing that would help if you're using a lot of lines as opposed to actually filling in the dark spaces. I'm just going to use Photoshop, and let me go ahead and open up Photoshop. I'm going to use Photoshop to just bring up that contrast. And I'm drinking coffee while I do this too because it's in the morning. All right, so I'm just going to do the classic drag and drop. All right, here we have this. Now, it looks like Megan scanned hers in instead of actually taking a picture, which is good. If you take a picture with your phone, try to get it as flat as possible and as evenly lit as possible. But it will help if you do a few things first. So here in Photoshop, at the bottom right, I'm clicking on these menus, and I'm going to add an adjustment layer. And that adjustment layer is, you know what? Let's just do this the classic way. I don't need to put on a bunch of adjustments. I'm going to go to, let's see, not filter, image adjustment, and I'm going to go to black and white from the drop down. Oof, look at that preset. It's kind of weird. Default, that's fine. We're not noticing a big difference because it's already close to black and white. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go to image adjustments again. I'm going to go to levels. I'm going to start right here is the histogram. I'm going to start pulling this to the left one all the way to the right, and you see how it's crunching. It's like really making the darks darks and the lights lights. On the right side, make this. I can pull this over. Nah, it's not doing what I want. So I'll adjust the middle one. I'm trying to get as dark as possible without having a lot of that grime in there that we can kind of see. Pull this over just a little bit. There we go. So I'm crunching it a bit to get it really black and white, and that looks pretty good. If I zoom in, you'll notice that we're getting a little bit of like this kind of banding at the, or these like choppy edges, but we're not going to worry too much about that. We'll fix that in the actual font file. All right, I'm going to actually take this over just a little more and hit OK. So this looks close. There's going to be a few places where cleanup is needed, like around the $sign here, but this looks good. Now, I'm going to save it as a JPEG. File, Save As, and I'm going to do a JPEG here because it likes JPEGs. I don't think it likes PSD files in BirdFont. I'm going to rename it so it knows it's different. Megs 002 underscore black. Save. That's fine. Now I don't need Photoshop anymore. I can just go back to BirdFont. Let's make this big so we don't have to look at a bunch of other stuff. I will pull up this picture shortly though. All right. So looking at BirdFont, now I want to import that as my background image. So I'm going to go to the hamburger menu at the right, import, export, import background image. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I don't really need to, I guess, but I don't like it being all far away. Over here at the left, we have like images, add. I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to get that Megs 002 black JPEG and hit open. So give it a sec, and boom, here we go. Let's go ahead and try to do this with something that's not too complex. We'll do the number 1. So what we want to do now is actually start selecting characters that we can create. I'm going to go up to the background image option up here at the top left. See this little one that looks like a little rectangle with a dot? I'm using that, and I'm going to go back to my canvas, click and drag around the number 1. I'm going to let go. So I let go, and now I'm just going to click in the middle of this, right here inside that square. And now we get it to look like this. So this adds a select glyph. This means I have selected something that will be an actual glyph of my font. So if I click on select glyph, and be careful, there are little X's there. Don't click on that. Select glyph. Now I did the number 1, so I just have to find the number 1 right here. Some of you might have something like that, or you might see that. Up here in the top left, go ahead and just go back to default. By clicking default, you'll get the default glyphs. All right, I'm going to go back over here, but I might have screwed around too much. Yeah, we're good. I'm going to double click on 1, and now that's number 1. Now, when that happens, and I'm going to do this again. Let's just go, I'll do this to the 0. I'm going to click and drag the 0, click inside of it. Now if I hit select glyph, see it's going to this automatically. If I click on overview at the top, that's not going to do what I want. I can double click on 0 now, but that's just opening up 0. So I accidentally clicked off of what I was doing. I'm going to go back to background image. I'm going to go back to this, make sure this is selected. Go to select glyph. It's over here under character sets that I want to move to default. By moving to that, I'm still in the process of what I'm doing. Now I can double click the 0 and it comes up. You can see I have 0 and 1 under parts here. All right, I'm just going to focus on the 1 for now. So I'm going to just go ahead and go up to the 1 up top here. If you don't see the number, you can always go to overview now and just click on the 1. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Where are my zoom tools? So zoom tools should be over here. I can zoom in and out with this bad boy. All right, I thought I could. Come on, zoom. Okay, I'm just going to hold down. For me, it's control because I'm on a PC. For you, it's command, and I'm going to kind of just spin my wheel here. But there are, oh, there we go. You can zoom in and out with this. Zoom on the left here. I want to make sure that I'm lining this up and scaling it correctly. So under guides and grids over here on the left, I'm going to select this one and select this one. So what we have here, this is the X height. So this is what the lowercase x would be. Now this seems a bit high for me. I'm going to go over here. If you hover to the left, you can kind of see this little arrow, and you can kind of pull that down a little bit. So I would say that my lower cases would be about halfway in general. I might have to change that, but that looks good. All right, we'll adjust these other ones in a minute here. But first, I want to go up to, I want to actually adjust the size of this bad boy here. And let's go ahead and I'm going to go to right here where we have this circle here, move size, rotate background image. Good. When that happens, we get this little triangle down here. We get this right here. This right here lets us rotate. I'm going to hit Command Z because I didn't want to do that, but I do want to scale up the size. So I'm clicking and dragging this to get it bigger. And I can click and drag in the middle to get it up like that. Maybe I do want to rotate it a little bit, like, no, Command Z. I like this, and I'm going to kind of get this lined up so this is coming down a little bit because that's pretty standard. And I want this to get right up to this line up here to make sure that capital feels nice and capitalized. Now I can adjust this a little more later. I'm just getting it to look good now. All right, cool. That's a good size for my one. X height is kind of a little bit above the center, which is good. Let that Let them lower cases be a little bit higher. That's looking pretty good. Up here, this line up top can be like the ascender, and down here, this line right here will be the descender. So if like a lowercase y comes to there. And if I want to adjust the spacing a little bit, this line and this line are that. So this would be left is like at 56. I could bring it in. I don't want it to be exact. I want to have a little bit of space there. And this one on the right, if I hover over the bottom part, highlights it, bring it to the left, and that looks pretty good. So I got my height and everything worked out. And I kind of use this as a reference. If I'm like, what do I want to use? How do I want this height to go? Oh, that's a picture of my dog. So I'm using this as a reference. Right here is the cap height right here. This top line, this kind of yellow line here is kind of where the lowercase ascenders are going up higher. I think I got that terminology right with the ascender. Yep, ascenders. And this is the X height right here. I'm keeping this one a little low. And down here is the baseline, this one. And below that, it's where like the Y's go to. And things like that, the descenders. So that's looking pretty good. Now let's auto trace this bad boy. So I have this selection tool selected right here. I'm going to keep that selected. And let's take a look. Where is auto trace? Maybe that's not what I want. Nope, it's cool. Background tools right here. So there's a list of tools on their website. If you go to the tutorials, it'll have a list and a description of all the tools. This is an important one right here, the show and hide background. I can click on and off that to show and hide that background image. We're going to want to do that. We're not going to insert a new one, but I am going to look at this. This right here is high contrast. If I click on that, you can see it makes it like much higher contrast. It's a little choppy, but I might do that in order to let this, that might help if I'm still a little bit choppy in the actual image, to make it even more high contrast for the auto trace. So I'll go ahead and do that for now. Don't worry about this choppiness right now. Down here we have on this set background threshold, haven't messed with that too much. It will affect the auto trace, but I'm not going to mess with it now. Then we have amount of auto trace details, that's set at 1, and then we have auto trace simplification. So these let it be more detailed or more simple, more points, more lines, that kind of a thing. Let's leave them at the default for now. Over at the far right, we have this X, delete background image. Don't touch that. And right here, where we have this kind of circle with dots, that's auto trace background image. I'm going to click on that now. It's going to take a second, but you'll see it kind of pop up in a second with the actual traced image above it. Boom. It actually takes a little bit to do it. I don't know if you saw it, but I can turn off my background image. So I'm turning that background on and off, and you can see that this actual image still stays there. And it's a pretty good tracing of it. It's a pretty good tracing, and I think those settings did well. It might take longer on your computer because mine's an actual like workstation. So we actually have now the 1, this number 1, as an actual font or as traced. If I go up top here to the drawing tools, I can click on this one right here, and then I can get to the actual points and stuff. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to just try to clean it up a little bit. For me, if I click on the center button on my mouse, because I have a 3-button mouse, it lets me go between seeing the actual seeing the outlines or seeing the thing. I'm not sure what that shortcut is on the keyboard. You can always click this and that'll do it, and you can click on that to go back and forth. But I say get a 3-button mouse. So when I look at this thing, it's looking okay, but it's a little bit wonky and wobbly. I want this to be straighter. So I'm making sure I have this selection tool selected, and I can actually, one of the ways to do this, I think it has too many points. Too many points. And if I zoom way in, you'll see that there are green points and there are blue points. Right here's a blue point, right here's a green point. The green is the handle, the blue is the actual point. I'm going to select this blue point and delete it. So I can zoom out a little bit. I'm going to hold down the space bar, so when I click and drag, it'll move the whole canvas. Let's go ahead right here, click that and delete it. Often, fewer points lead to straighter, smoother lines. This one down here, instead of deleting it, I'm going to kind of click and drag it down, and I'm going to move this. So these are attached to each other, this Bezier curve handle. I want to break these. And the way to break these is to use a tool. So if you can see what I'm saying, if I move this one, the other one moves. If I move this one, the other one moves. There's a tool to break them so you can adjust them separately, and that's this right here in the top left. This little convert segment tool right here that looks like a little broken thing. If I click on that, I just want to make sure I have this one selected, only that one. I'll click on convert segment to line, do that, and look, it broke them. It automatically makes them into like a right angle. So now I can start to adjust this, and I can have like a smoother little bit right here. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit and click on the center. So already this is like way smoother. Like look how smooth that is. That's compared to this line right here. I want to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go through and I'm going to kind of delete a couple of these blue points that I feel like are unnecessary to make it into a single big beautiful line. Zoom out, click on it, center click. Boom, just deleting a few points and slightly adjusting that got this to be really straight. I also think I want this to kind of curve in just a skosh, because that's how Megs originally drew it. I'm going to move around some of these lines a little bit to give it that calligraphy good lookingness of this font style. Zoom out a little bit. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. I can adjust this top one here a skosh. Let's go like this and pull this over. So the more that I want this to be, I'm going to go ahead and delete this point. Kind of bring this up, bring this down. So the auto trace works really well to get you started, to actually like get the thing looking kind of interesting and unique, or to get that original shape. And then it's kind of up to you to adjust it to be how you want it to look. Let's go to this one. This one has a ton of extra bits that we don't need. So like look at all these extra points. Don't need that one. Just need a little, just need a couple to give it that nice curvature. Delete that one. Ooh, that's a bit, look at that, look how big that handle got. Let's see, we'll delete this one. Kind of curve this handle a little bit. Oh, definitely delete that one. Nobody wants that one there. So now, yeah, it's looking better. But I kind of want this to curve in with this. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit. This in here. Put this, make this a little bit straighter. So it kind of starts to match that curve a little bit. Let's see how this works. That inner curve with the one. Starting to feel a little too wide, so I'll bring this in a little bit. Now we're getting somewhere. I just got to kind of fix this up. So as you keep doing this, you'll start to get faster and faster and faster and faster and faster until you're the fastest maker of lines in the world. So that's looking pretty good. It's got some character. I like that it's not perfect. Definitely want to fix up over here a little bit. I'm just going to delete this one right there. Bring this down a little bit. Bring this up a skosh. Let's go like this. Ooh, I went too far. Went too far. Bring that up. Bring this down a little bit. Keep it interesting, of course. So let's say I wanted to like add a line at some point, or add a point. Just to show you, say right here, I wanted to add a point right here to make it straighter. You can just double click on the line and it will allow you to add a point, which is really a nice feature. You just double click. Careful of right clicking, because right clicking will sometimes add random points that you don't need. All right, that's looking okay. I'm going to add a point here by double clicking, so this can to straighten this out, to bring this in a little bit. See how this starts to look. Yeah, okay. So this is where I'm going to take this for now. Now I'm going to take this a little farther because I'm obsessive, and some of us are obsessive, and I can delete that point. I don't need a whole nother point right there. Just kind of adjust these. Okay, so this is as far as I'm going to take this number one. And this is looking pretty good. I think this looks like a good solid number 1. I'm going to hit Command S to save it. And we have a good solid number 1 here. Heck yeah. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. What else did I want to go over? So for your homework assignment, I would say at the very least, try to get to a point where you have all of your letters auto-traced. And then once you get them all auto-traced, then if you have the time, go back and start fixing them up and making them look good like this. So if you bring it in and you have them auto-traced and you actually have your letters and you've adjusted them just enough to get them to like they look like your letter, even if they're a bit wonky, that's fine. We'll take some more time to play with them later. I wanted to look over some people were talking about, let's go to this O right here. So I just clicked on the O because that's the other letter I made. I'm going to have to turn on the guidelines for this one because you got to do it for all. This is the letter 0 or the number 0. And I'm quickly going to go to the resize like I did before. I'm going to bring this bad boy up. Too big. Right here. Now, often when you have curves on the lines, you're going to want them to go a little above or a little below those baselines and stuff. Trust me, it helps things look good, and I keep clicking on the wrong things here, but you'll see even on the T's and on the D's, they go a touch below that line. So some people were talking about how do I use just making a stroke. Now you can use the drawing tools like the pen tool here to just create a stroke. So you just you create the outline. So with the pen tool here, down here, stroke, I can select on stroke, and this gives me my stroke options. Now, with the pen tool selected, I can click to make points. So I got to click and then click to drop my first point. And I can click and kind of drag to make this point. Click and drag to make this point. Click and drag to make this point, and then I can connect that last one. Now I'm going to go ahead and click in here and kind of fix up a little bit of this. And I'm going to turn off my background image by just going down to, oh, I'm going to actually have to hit on a different tool so I can turn on and off my background image. So here's the thing that's annoying about stroke. So you can create a single stroke, no problem, but you cannot adjust the actual weight of the stroke for individual sections. So down here, if I go to my stroke tools, I can go to stroke width and I can click and drag on it. So click and drag down. That took it all the way down to like 0, or click and drag up. Or the easier way is to right click on it or control click on it to bring up the set menu up top, and I can make this like 4 and hit return. And then I can make a thing out of just the stroke. But I do not have the option of making the stroke thicker here or thinner here. So if I want to do that, I have to actually add more lines. Let's look at that background image again. So yeah, there's a lot, like if I want to make that big thing there, I now have to go back into my drawing tools, back into the pen tool. I'll go here and I'll click to start it, and I'll start to make it, right? Then I'll try to fill it in there. And I'll even close it off. So we got this stroke thing going here. I'll go over to the stroke. Let's go ahead and click on the right here. I'll make this like 9. Oh, it's because I closed it. It doesn't, oh man, look at that. Okay. See, I just don't like the stroke. It's just not the best way to try to mess with this. I'm actually going to click over here now. All right, so we're seeing the stroke option. It's all over the place. I don't like it one bit, actually. Yeah, so I'm going to say just using the stroke is not the strongest thing. I just deleted all that. This is why, let's go ahead and turn the background image back on, high contrast that bad boy, and I'm going to go ahead and just leave it at default and hit the auto trace. Give it a second, because, you know, it takes a bit. There we go. See, an auto trace gave me a pretty good version of this, and I can just start to adjust it myself like this. Now this is like way too much detail. Let's go ahead and delete some of these. Get this nice and smooth. Fix it up. All right, so there. So you kind of know where to go from here with this. I can adjust, let's go ahead down here and just over the sides. So one thing I want to talk about before I'm done is kerning and spacing. So I'm gonna hit Command S to save what I have. I'm gonna go up here. I'm gonna go to spacing and kerning from the hamburger dropdown, and I'm gonna go to show spacing tab or show kerning tab and spacing tab. Let's go with spacing. So I have the numbers. If I start to type in my keyboard, nothing shows up because I haven't filled out a bunch. But if I hit 1 or 0, I'm actually typing those ones and zeros. So, oh, making a little binary code. Nice. Whoops, Command Z. What you'll see is I accidentally started to mess with the spacing in a bad way, in a way I didn't want to. Command Z. Oh man, what did I do? I'm just going to delete this all. So I'm just going to hit the ones. Alright, with just ones, you'll see I really brought up that spacing accidentally. So this is the spacing, and so this is just going to be the space between things. This little icon right here, I can click and drag on it to make the spacing more or less so they're like into each other or not. That looks pretty good with the spacing for the ones. And now at the end of the, ooh, okay, whoops, spacing. Okay, if I do some zeros, oh, let me go ahead. 1, 1, 1, 1. I kind of messed up some, oh, I see what I messed up real big. There's a few different spacing things here, like this one and this one. And I accidentally flipped them backwards. Whoa, I've really screwed this up. Let's see. I'm going to pause the thing and just figure out how to reset. Okay, I figured out what I did wrong. See how there's these two little signs here? I had one like stretched out way to the left, and it was like doing some weird stuff. So if you look, I'm going to pull this back to the right, and if I start moving around, you'll see that I have a couple different things going on here. I'm just going to go ahead and delete. See how that's like that? I want that first thing to be, okay, let's get to, there we go. I want this to be behind the one. So every time I make a new one, it's always behind it. So getting that spacing right. Oh, see, I messed it up again. Behind the one. There we go. And this one right here, this little gray one that's like that, that's how I'll get the spacing correct like this. All right, so 1, 1, 1. Good, 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 good. So now I can select this one, and if I want to make them a little tighter, I can make them a little tighter. That looks good for the ones. Now, I'm going to delete that. I'm just going to go to the zeros. Now I can mess with the zeros as well. And in general, the space, this is going to be the spacing of the overall font, actually, if I'm correct, as opposed to each individual character. So that's fine. I fixed that. I'm going to X out of spacing. What I really wanted to do is go to spacing and kerning and show kerning tab. All right, now if I do 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, you can see I can actually do, instead of everything, just the kerning, the automatic kerning on that character. So the ones, so I can make sure things don't bump in. If I want all the ones to bump into each other, I can do it like that. But there we go. But this lets me select the kerning for just a single character. There are ways to do multiple characters, like how a C and an X are next to each other if you want them to like bump into each other. But I'm not going to worry too much about that. That's for a future thing. So that's how you start to work on the spacing of a specific character, or the kerning of a specific character. And you can see here I have the zeros, the ones, and I have the in-between two different ones. So I'm going to leave that. That looks pretty good. Give the zeros a little bit more space. Give the ones a little more space. A little less space. A little less space here. So I'm going to hit Command S. What I was doing there was adjusting for any time you use this character or this character, how that kerning is going to work. Last thing I want to show is exporting a font. I'm going to click on the hamburger menu. I'm going to go to Import and Export. And I'm going to go ahead to, let's see, Export Fonts. Now you get a bunch of different font kind of styles you can. I'm going to deselect SVG and EOT and just worry about the TTF. We can't do OTF because you need the plus version for that. You can name your typeface up here. I'm going to name it Practice. File name, Practice Font. I'm not going to worry about this right here. There's name and description, and in that you can actually postscript name. I'm going to say Practice name, Practice. If this was a bold font or a regular or an italic, I could put that there. I could say what the weight was, full name, name and style, Practice blubber. I don't know why I put blubber, but I did. But these are all the things like which version it is, the description, your copyright. You can give it all that information here. I'm going to go back to Export Settings tab. That looks good. Name and description. Let's go ahead and do that SVG too. And then I'm going to hit Export. Whoops, did I hit Export? Export. Export. Did it export? Oh yeah, it exported without me realizing it exported. It's so as you can see, Practice TTF, the SVG, that gives us some stuff, and so my TTF, True Type Font, I can double click that now, and it will allow me to install the font. And as you can see, it's just got like this default thing, but the 1 and the 0 here are the actual font. There we go. So 1 and 0. This is showing the preview inside on Windows. On Mac, I think it's only going to show the letters that are there. This one is just showing default for everything else because it only has the 1 and the 0. But I can actually install Practice Font, which is weird. And if I go into something like Photoshop now, and let's go ahead, File, New. I might have to restart Photoshop. We'll see. I'm going to make a type box, and over here I'm going to make my type like 72. I'm going to change it to Practice. Let's find it on my list of fonts. LMNO. Practice. It's right there. And if I type 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, it's there. If I type other stuff, it's going to just default to Times New Roman because I haven't filled it all out. But, and that's just because that's something that Photoshop does automatically. But there's my font as an actual freaking font. And if I want to, I can make one of these things, just that first one, like a hue, like 16. And look at it, it's teeny tiny. Zooming in. Let me hit return. Oops. Let me click off of this. I kind of started to mess with it. All right, look at that. I'm doing it. Look at me, Dad. I'm okay. I made it. So I'm actually able to use that as a font now. All right. This was a long tutorial, but I think it got you, like it's only half an hour. Half an hour, I did a couple things. I played around. I learned a little as I went. Once you start doing this, you'll get there. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.